Empire Productions.
Alice in Chains formed in the late 1980s when founding members Jerry Cantrell and Sean Kinney were looking for a new lead singer to join their band. They recruited Layne Staley and released their debut album Facelift in 1990, and the rest is history. Alice in Chains' live shows throughout the early 90s were power-packed, full of energy, and as loud as hell, with Layne Staley belting out all the band's hit songs. The band enjoyed a great amount of success and shared many fun times over the years. However, July 3rd, 1996 would be the final ever time Layne Staley would perform live on stage with Alice in Chains. It was at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, July 3rd, 1996, where Layne Staley would play his final ever show with Alice in Chains. Kiss were reuniting with their original lineup for the first time since 1979. Set to join Kiss on tour were Stone Temple Pilots. However, frontman Scott Weiland was entering rehab at this time, which forced STP to pull out. So in came Alice in Chains. Like STP, Chains had also had problems with their enigmatic lead singer. Staley's addiction had meant that Alice in Chains had in effect ceased touring since the Dirt Tour ended in 1993. In fact, they had only played 2 concerts since then, an acoustic show to promote Jar of Flies in January of 1994, and their high-profile comeback on MTV Unplugged in April of 1996. Alice in Chains had not toured behind their self-titled third studio album, which was released in November of 1995. This decision was a shock to the music industry, as the record had shot to number 1 on the Billboard charts. But Chains were now ready to return to the road, and they had committed to 4 opening slots with Kiss. The lights went down and a huge roar greeted the band. Fans who attended the concert stated, "Jerry went on stage and kind of looked back in surprise. He was really happy. This was a Kiss crowd for sure, but the fans were into Alice, plus they had their own fans there as well." During the set opener, again, bass player Mike Inez was jumping around with his head down and ferociously banging. Jerry Cantrell struck his chords of his guitar with everything he had, and drummer Sean Kinney was fully committed to energizing the band. But concert goers noted that something was off with their frontman, Layne Staley. "I'm watching the band from the side of the stage and they are really into it, and then Layne is just standing there. The guy was a professional, but it seemed to me like he didn't want to be there." Other concert goers noted, "After a few songs, I realized that something wasn't right with him. I felt sad for him, and I just focused on Jerry because I was virtually watching the same Jerry from like 1990. Nothing had changed. But Layne, man, wow, everything had changed." However, Staley proved, much like he did on his MTV Unplugged performance just a couple of months prior, never to write him off. He became energized during different points in the show, belting out huge vocals on Sludge Factory, Them Bones, Rooster, and the band's final song of the night, Man in the Box. He tried until the very end, and to tell you the truth, this wasn't a terrible show. People dug them. It was just that we knew what Layne had done before and what he was capable of. So, looking at the setlist from Layne Staley's final performance with Alice in Chains, we had 11 songs being played that night. 5 were from Dirt, 3 were from their most recent release in '95, their self-titled Alice in Chains, 2 from their debut Facelift, and 1 song, A Little Bitter, from Music Bank. And to note, 3 songs from this live show, Again, A Little Bitter, and Damn That River, were recorded and released for Alice in Chains' live album, which came out in 2000. After the show, it was alleged that Staley had an almost fatal drug overdose and had to remain in Kansas City as his bandmates flew home to Seattle. Although he recovered, the band was forced to go on hiatus. Although Alice in Chains never officially disbanded, Staley became a recluse, rarely leaving his Seattle condominium following the death of his ex-fiancée due to a drug overdose in October of 1996. Locals said, occasionally you would see Staley hanging around town, but for the most part, he was keeping to himself at this time. Staley almost performed live again in 1998 when Jerry Cantrell rode into Seattle on a solo tour for his album Boggy Depot. It was Halloween night in 1998 and Staley was backstage as a guest. Cantrell reportedly asked Staley to join him on stage, which would have been quite historic. However, Staley declined. And sadly, as we all know, Layne Staley would pass away just a few years later in 2002. But that is the story of Staley's final live performance with Alice in Chains and how it all went down. Concert goers stating that something just clearly wasn't right with Staley that night back in '96, and it was a very sad end for a man who had given so much to the fans, to his bandmates, to music in general, his awesome rock voice, and all the work that he had accomplished with Alice in Chains, everything they had done. The guy was a real talent, and it was just a tragedy that it all ended up the way it did. But for us fans, we can look back on all the awesome stuff that Layne did do with Alice in Chains, all the great songs that he sung on, the great live performances that he did have, and all the great material that he produced with Alice in Chains. That's always going to be there and it's never going away. So thanks guys for tuning into the video, much appreciated, and we will catch you next time.